Hi, in this video I'm going to talk about how NLP or Neuro Linguistic Programming can help you to move yourself away from intrusive thoughts or obsessive thoughts. I'm Orla Kirby and I am a therapist specialising in helping people to move themselves away from OCD and or severe anxiety. So in this video I'm going to talk about what NLP is, particularly from the point of view of how we filter or edit data and information from what's going on around us, and how that relates to moving away from intrusive thoughts. I'm then going to talk about NLP as a way of helping us to access what is powerful and active and dynamic inside us, and how that can be really helpful for moving away from intrusive thoughts. And then I'm going to talk about how NLP allows you to access a whole different way of communicating with other people and with yourself, and how that is super useful for moving yourself away from intrusive thoughts or obsessive thoughts. Okay, and with all of these videos in this series, although my main focus here is on moving away from intrusive thoughts, the same processes would also work for moving away from any kind of negative thought pattern that feels really stuck, that feels really unhelpful. Okay, so first of all, to talk a little bit about what NLP is. NLP, it's complex, so always hard to define, and I might do a whole other video where I go into more detail in describing exactly what NLP is. But certainly, one way into understanding NLP and what it is would be to think about the way that we filter everything that we're noticing, and every bit of data or information that's coming towards us from the world we're in, from the room we're in, from the street we're walking down. How are we filtering that? And the idea that we're filtering it always through many things that we already carry inside of us: our beliefs, our memories from the past, our attitudes, our habits of thinking and being, our meta programs, which is like our thoughts about thinking, our values, all of these things that we have built up inside of us over perhaps many years, and also from yesterday. We are filtering everything through these all the time. So there isn't such a thing as kind of pure experience of the present moment, that we are always filtering and editing, and that my filters are going to be really different from your filters or from my next door neighbour's filters. So that even though we might be in the same situation, we are actually experiencing something perhaps very different. And then also through quite detailed processes within NLP, there are very powerful targeted ways of shifting and changing whatever part of that structure of beliefs and filters we want to change. And this, of course, means that there's excellent possibilities here for moving away from intrusive thoughts, because thoughts really show up as that intersection of our beliefs, our internal filters, because to some extent thoughts can actually simply be a product of those internal goings on, right? If I'm just lying down with my eyes closed, of course there'll still be certain data, right? The room will be warm or cold, but in a fairly not much is going on situation, a lot of my thoughts are going to be based on what's going on inside of me. What are my beliefs? What are those filters? And then it's also true that whatever is happening in any situation, whatever anyone else is doing, whatever else is happening, what I'm hearing about, what I'm noticing, I'm going to also have thoughts that are related to that, right? But all of those thoughts are also going to be, to an extent, a product of what I'm filtering that information through. So thoughts are deeply related, whichever kind of thought. They're always very related to those filters that we all have inside of us: beliefs, values, systems and habits of thinking, meta programs. And if we can shift that stuff, that internal structure, of course, that has a massive impact on what it's possible to think and how easily it's possible to think different things and widen our range of thinking and move away from any kinds of thoughts that are extremely unhelpful, and to just have a greater range. NLP doesn't delete anything, it doesn't remove the possibility of anything, so it's not that it's going to block you from thinking something that's unhelpful. It's always still possible to go and have an unhelpful thought, but in a way this is kind of reassuring, right? You wouldn't want to go through a process that was necessarily blocking, or it's a bit harsh to kind of block something or make something impossible. It's more that it adds to your range of possibilities. So NLP is never narrowing the range of possibility, it is adding to the range of possibility. It's freeing up more different kinds of thinking. So in that way, it can be super helpful for moving away from intrusive thoughts, because it's very precise and targeted. There are ways and processes and methods within NLP for working out exactly how a person is doing their problem, as the language of NLP would say. So what are those filters? What are those beliefs? What are the meta programs? What are the values? And what wants or needs shifting, and kind of making the shift that's going to cause the largest amount of change, right? So identifying that, and then in a very precise, tailored to that individual person way, getting in there and shifting whichever filter needs shifting, so that there is then this much greater range of freedom in terms of what it feels possible to think and what it feels easy to think. Okay, so that's one way in which NLP is super helpful for moving away from intrusive thoughts. Another way is the emphasis in NLP on stepping into our ability to feel and to be powerful, active, dynamic, and take responsibility for our actions, our thoughts, our feelings, to step into our agency, our sense of our agency, so our sense of our ability to impact change and to make things happen, and also our actual, not just our sense of that, but to connect with our actual agency, our actual ability to make things happen and to affect change in our lives and the lives of other people. Which is not to say that we control everything, right? I am not someone who would stand with an argument that we entirely create our own reality at all, right? There are many, large forces, social forces, economic forces, things that are, I believe anyway, out of our hands, right? However, often, and particularly if our stress level is very high, that would be the case if you were struggling with intrusive thoughts, is that your stress levels would therefore be very high. It's easy to be disconnected from how much we can impact change in our life and in the life of others, and in our own internal experience of our mind. So particularly if someone is in a situation of feeling a bit like, I'm at the mercy of these thoughts, or God, when will these thoughts ever stop? Or, is there actually, I've tried so many things, is there actually anything I can do about these thoughts that just go on and I have to put up with them all day? Not that I'm saying that would be how everyone with OCD would feel necessarily. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. But just because it is such a challenging experience and such a horrendous thing to be tolerating and to be dealing with, understandably, it's not uncommon to have thoughts like, that almost my mind is working against me, or I'm a victim of these thoughts, or, this is a thing that's very much happening to me, and like maybe it will just go on forever, and maybe there's nothing I can do about it. If any of those things are ways of thinking that are occurring to you either all the time or sometimes in relation to intrusive thoughts, then how amazing to have a way of deliberately accessing a state of feeling very powerful and very active, very strong, very much like you can impact change, like you have this really wide, great range of impact and of possibility, like things are open, sense of freedom, and the possibility of action taking is really open to you. That's just magnificent to be able to deliberately access that. And NLP has all kinds of exercises and processes for really getting in touch with that part of yourself, which everyone absolutely does have, right? So it's something that's already there within you, and it's just a case of accessing. Yeah. Then the last thing we're going to talk about is the way that NLP allows you to have a whole different approach to communication, both communication with other people and also with yourself. So one thing that's really powerful about the NLP approach to communication is the focus on energy and on state. So sometimes if someone is, and again, I don't want to speak for everyone with OCD or, suggest that I can read anyone's mind, but it's something that I've noticed from working with a lot of people who are moving away from OCD, that quite a common thing is to go over in your mind after a conversation or after a communication with someone, and to be kind of almost repeating what you said, and there to be a lot of anxiety about maybe having said the wrong thing, or having said something that was not ideal, or maybe going over what someone else has said and repeating that again and again, and that being part of larger kind of repeating structures. And then there being quite a lot of, in relation to that, there being quite a lot of anxiety about upcoming communication. This could be written communication or spoken, or all different kinds of communication. So quite a lot of emphasis then on the words being used, and are these the right words, or would it be better if I change it to these words, or what about these words, and almost a kind of paralysis about what words to use, and maybe what do these words that someone else is using mean, and a desire to really know the meaning, or to be really fully reassured about someone definitely meaning this. And again, I know that OCD and intrusive thoughts are different for everyone, so maybe not all of that might resonate with you, but maybe some of it would. So if there is a lot of tension and stress around word choice and word use and the precise meanings of words and so on, how amazing then to have an approach to communication that emphasizes energy and feel over precise word choice. So this can be transformative, really, right? To think, oh, okay, actually, my focus is going to be shifting myself into a certain energy, or thinking about this communication as an energy exchange, or, feeling into the energy from the other person, right? It can just really broaden and open things out and allow a different way of conceptualizing communication that is really helpful, very deeply relaxing, connects you more with your body, and helps to shift away from a sort of particular intrusive thought, anxious type focus on language in a very kind of checking or monitoring way, right? At the same time, and this might almost seem like it's going to contradict what I just said, NLP does have loads of focus on language, right? But in quite a wonderful way, where it's all about almost waking up to language, or allowing the language that we're using to wake up and come alive in different ways. And just getting more precise about language, but not in a kind of overly monitoring, anxious way, in a kind of interested, alive way, right? That makes us feel good. So, for example, if someone has thoughts that are repeating in their mind, again and again, maybe for many years, the language around that may well have become kind of dead or inactive in a way to that person. And they're almost maybe not even quite thinking about it as language. And an NLP type awareness of language, like what's actually going on in those sentences? Oh, it's interesting that I've chosen this word, and oh, look, I've arranged it this way, and it's kind of an example of this kind of language use. And what would happen if I flipped this slightly, or, turned that up, or turned this down, or, shifted into this other use of grammar, and all of this kind of opening up of the language, and just awareness of the language in a kind of alive way can be really helpful for making a repeating thought less dominant, less kind of oppressive, because there's more of a kind of an awakeness and aliveness in the way of looking at and understanding that thought, of perceiving that thought. And there seems to be, within a moment, there can seem to be more flexibility, more openness to change. It helps for the thought to become, rather than this kind of heavy thing that won't go away and keeps going on, it becomes you know, this living thing made of language that can shift and can go this way, can change back that way, and can move around, and it's part of this very kind of living, dynamic thing that is language, right? So in that way, in the kind of aliveness and the possibility for change, NLP has an amazing, very powerful approach to language that can be super helpful for shifting away from intrusive thoughts. Okay, so in the next video, I'm going to be talking about timeline therapy that comes out of NLP and is at the same time its own thing, and can also be really helpful for moving away from intrusive thoughts. So I'll see you in that next video.